Welcome back to another episode of the Social Media Millionaire podcast. This episode, we're going to talk about kind of a touchy topic, and we're just going to be honest, okay? If you're posting consistently and you're not really making very many sales, it's costing you more than just time. It's also leaving a ton of money on the table. And I have to tell you that there is a proven system to fix this and one that is going to work across industries for every buyer type. That's what I'm going to break down today. So, this is my converts framework, which is quite literally a step-by-step method for creating content that doesn't just get likes and views, but actually drives sales. And this is going to ensure that you are hitting home to every single element of the conversion equation that is required across your social media for you to actually turn your views into sales. So, beyond sharing the framework, I'm also going to give you some real client examples and a quick way to kind of audit your own content for better conversions, because I have to tell you, I am sick and tired of seeing the garbage dumpster fire advice that is just absolutely running rampant on social media. I'm so over it. I'm overseeing content ideas where they're like, here's your next week of content. And it's like education and behind the scenes. Like, that's not going to make you any money. And I have to tell you, I'm sick of seeing it. And so if you've listened to this podcast, there's going to be no excuses. And I am literally going to be using these podcasts to basically expose the dumpster fire advice that I'm seeing in the industry and just give you the framework to use that will actually work. It really doesn't have to be that deep. It's really not that complicated. And I'm tired of seeing it. So here you go. Let's dive in. Let's start with the results because that's ultimately what we're all after. One of my favorite client examples is somebody who is she is a wedding planner. She also has a business coaching other people in the wedding space and other wedding pros. We have taken over doing content for her. And this is literally the exact framework that we are using. And it's also, worth it to say that this client primarily was getting leads from ad traffic before working with us. She literally made a comment to me once that her ads no longer work without organic. So do with that what you will. November was a gigantic month for her, over $100,000. And like I said, this is the exact framework that we use. When we sat down 101, we mapped out her content together. This is the exact thing that I was going off of to make sure that she was checking all of these boxes. And what do you know? She had over $120,000 month. So we're going to cut through the generic advice and we're going to talk about connecting your audience's current reality with these other pieces of information that they need to know, because it's ultimately going to position you as the only choice. And you're not going to have competitors because they're not going to be as good at marketing as you. And so they're not going to be able to compete and pull an audience in the way that you are. So let's get into the power of strategic content. Obviously, a lot of businesses struggle with their content, and I understand that. The biggest issue seems to be that you're posting content, but it's just not resonating. So, like, your audience doesn't see themselves in your messaging, or they're hesitating because their objections haven't been addressed. And we're going to go a lot deeper than the surface level, boring advice of educate and add value. We're going to get into the neuromarketing side of things and how to effectively turn a view into a sale. If you're tired of like shouting into the void and basically having crickets, if even, we're going to fix that today. So, this is why the first step in the Converts framework is all about connecting with people's symptoms and their current reality. I yap about this constantly, but the reality is that your audience needs to feel seen before they're going to listen to you. And we know this because this isn't something that I've just came up with or decided worked for me based off of my content. This is science. Your audience, everyone, buys with their primal brain. So if you've ever heard the phrase that we buy with emotion and rationalize with logic, this is the science behind this. So you have essentially two parts of your brain. You have the primal brain and then you have the rational brain. And the rational brain is what looks at logistics. It is trying to rationalize your decisions that you make. Your primal brain is above all else selfish, and it is constantly scanning to attempt to keep you safe. It's constantly assessing for threats. And that's why things like loss aversion and urgency are so activating to the primal brain, is because missing out on something to your brain literally means death. That's kind of what you're playing with, is like people's fight or flight. When you are leveraging loss aversion, when you're leveraging urgency in an unethical way, you're literally putting people into fight or flight, and you're making them feel like they are going to die if they don't get this thing. Now, again, their rational brain understands that it's not a life or death situation, but our primal brain doesn't understand that. Like I said, it's constantly scanning and assessing for threats. Because we know that the primal brain is selfish, it's constantly asking the question, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? How does this benefit me? What am I going to get out of this? That is why step one is to connect with your audience's current reality, connect with what they are actively experiencing. So instead of just saying, like, oh, my program's going to help you grow your business, we are hitting home to the fact that they feel stuck in a cycle of creating content that isn't getting any traction, and we're fixing it. The difference between a symptom and a problem is also an important distinction. So a symptom is a byproduct of this root cause problem that you know that they have because you are the expert. And what a lot of people do and do wrong is they try to hit home to the problems. And that's where a lot of educational content comes in and falls flat, because people are trying to say, oh, okay, here's 3 tips for how to solve this problem. Most people don't know that they have that problem. Let me give you this analogy. I think it'll help you a lot. I share this all the time. When you're thinking about a diagnosis, right? Let's say you have strep throat, okay? What you are aware of is that you woke up with a sore throat. It hurts to swallow. You maybe have a fever. Certain foods don't sound good to you. Eating crackers feels like death. Like you can only like drink liquids like hot tea, like whatever, because your throat hurts. That's what you know. You don't know, because you're not a doctor. You haven't done the diagnostics. You don't know if you have strep or if you have the flu or if you have the Rona, right? All you know is that your throat hurts. That's your symptom. And so when we talk about this in relation to your clients, their symptom is the thing that's coming up for them daily as a result of the problem that they have. For a lot of people's, like for this example that I've used, their symptom is that they're posting content, but nobody's responding, right? They don't know that their root problem is because they are missing specific conversion triggers that is causing them to not make sales, right? They don't know that. That's their official diagnosis, right? They're missing this, they're doing it wrong. They don't know that. They just know I'm posting, nobody's responding, nobody's buying from me. That's the difference between a symptom and a problem. So when we're talking about connecting with people's current reality, we're speaking to what's happening for them on a day-to-day level. So on a day-to-day level, they're posting content and not getting sales. They're posting consistently and nobody's liking, commenting, responding. That's the symptom, not the problem. And so what we want to do in our content is help people feel seen and help their primal brain know that we are in fact talking to them, that this does apply to them, by hitting home to those symptoms, by essentially getting in their head and saying, listen, I see you. This is what's going on for you on a daily basis. Here's why. So you, in this analogy, you're the doctor. You're connecting their symptoms to their actual diagnosis. You're diagnosing them and telling them what their actual problem is. And what is the prescription, ladies and gentlemen? Let's all say it together. It's your product or service. That's correct. Okay. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, the next part of the framework is O, which is overcoming objections. And this is another key part of the framework that most people miss. You're probably creating educational content. You're probably creating content that's quote unquote valuable, that's giving a lot of information. And you're like, why are these other people in my same niche or in my same industry? Why do they have 100,000 followers and they seem to be getting all these sales? And I have 12 followers and I'm not getting any response, even though I'm posting more or less the same thing. They're overcoming objections and you're not. So there's certain objections that we know that every single person is going to have, regardless of the product or service or industry. Number one is price. I can't afford it. Even if they can afford it, they're going to tell you that they can afford it. Number two, is this going to work for me? So clarity objections. That's always going to be a problem no matter what your industry is. And this is why we say this is a industry agnostic strategy, because it doesn't apply to specific industries. Every single person, when they buy anything ever, these objections come up for them if they haven't been sold properly. So they're thinking it's too expensive. They're thinking it's not going to work for them. They're wanting some sort of a guarantee. They want to see results. They're worried about the time frame, right? These objections are universal. And so when you learn to overcome them in your content before you ever get to an application, before you ever get to a sales call, not only is your timeline from finding you to actually converting going to be that much shorter, but you're also going to be removing a lot of resistance in your sales process. So when you grow to a certain point like us, where you have hundreds of leads coming in a month and you have to have a sales team to handle it because you, the founder, don't have enough time in your day to sit there and take 25 sales calls in a day. If you can overcome those objections in your content, you're going to make it that much easier for your closers to be able to close. So this is going to affect you not even just in getting applications and getting leads, but also in the rest of your sales process. Because if this is done and out of the way, you're removing a lot of that resistance for yourself later on, just because they've watched your content. Number 3 is N. We have narrates their desires. As important as understanding their problems and their symptoms is also understanding what their desired outcome is. What is it that they want? What does the ideal version of their life look like? Maybe it looks like being 50 pounds lighter. Maybe it looks like not having crippling anxiety when they try to drive to the grocery store. Maybe it looks like they are making $100,000 in a month. Maybe it looks like they're not having a mental breakdown when they have to set a boundary with their boss, right? These ideal outcomes look different for everybody, but there are going to be specific desires, specific outcomes that you are speaking to. And that is what you're selling. You're not selling your product. You're not selling your service. Nobody gives a damn how many calls or how many modules or what's in your program. They're buying the outcome. So if you are not narrating their desires back to them and helping them to see, again, what's in it for them, what are you going to get out of this, they're not going to convert. That one seems obvious, but whatever. Next, we have villains. Identify what your villains are. For me, it's other people who try to hack the algorithm, when hacking the algorithm is irrelevant, because the algorithm measures consumer behavior. And if you understand how to leverage consumer psychology to control consumer behavior, guess what? You can control the algorithm. Yeah. So it's not really that deep. And so that's one of my villains. Another one of my villains is people that are telling people to run ads when they can't even convert with organic content, right? That pisses me off. So it's things about your industry, for lack of a better explanation, that make you mad. And so you do things differently, right? They're the things about your industry that are ineffective or that you don't want to do. We have a client right now who is a jewelry brand, and one of her villains is this cheap ass jewelry that turns your fingers green the second that you dip into a swimming pool, right? That's one of her villains. So again, this is something that is going to be applicable to you across industries, across platforms. It doesn't matter. You just need to determine what those things are for your brand, because that's going to be a key thing that differentiates you from everyone else. Show how your approach is the antidote to all of their problems and why none of the other solutions are actually going to work. Next is we have to elevate your authority. So this is where sharing testimonials, results, industry insights, setting you apart as a leader in your field, and the villain, along with sharing like results and industry stats and just showing that you know your stuff, those two things are going to put you eons ahead of your competitors. Your competitors aren't going to be able to touch you because they don't know how to do this. Next is results. Don't just tell what the results are, show the results. So use screenshots, use videos, use detailed client wins, and always provide context. If you're just sharing screenshots, nobody cares about your screenshots. We need context. Where did this person start? What did you actually do for them? And I'm not talking about vague platitudes and niceties like, oh, we just help them feel so much more confident. Now this is what they have. How? How did you do that? What was the framework? What's the process? What is the process that they go through in your program that made them more confident so now they don't have XYZ problem? How? Tell us how you do it. Again, vague platitudes not going to cut it. Next is targets all 4 buyer types. I feel like I don't need to say more about this because I yap about this in basically every piece of content. But there's 4 buyer types: amiable, expressive, driver, analytical. Each of them, they care about different things when they're going to make a purchase decision. Expressive and amiable buyers are more emotional. Driver and analytical buyers are more logical and assertive. Okay? So you are probably one, maybe two of these buyer types, right? If you want a longer explanation of this, go listen to the episode about buyer types. Let's say you are prominently a driver buyer. I myself am prominently a driver buyer. So what content makes the most sense for me and is the easiest for me to create? Content that's going to speak to driver buyers. Yes, correct. If I don't want to miss out on 75% of sales from the other people that are in my audience, I need to learn how to say words that are going to activate those specific other buyer types. That should be infused into your content. And then finally, we are speaking to their knowledge gaps. So this is going to fully position you as someone who truly understands what they're going through, and you are going to help them to understand what mistakes they're making, what they're doing wrong, what information they don't yet have that's keeping them from where they want to be. So this is where we talk about the conversion equation, where we have to speak to their current reality, their desired outcome, and we have to help them understand what the gap is that's keeping them from that desired outcome. This is that part. So we have to help people understand you're doing things wrong. Maybe you were taught this and that's not correct. Maybe you don't know this and this is the thing that you need to know. And how are they going to learn how to do that thing effectively? By buying your product, by joining your program, whatever it is. So if we can check all of those boxes of the converts framework, then we have checked off every single box based off of what we know about human psychology, user behavior, and neuromarketing. We have checked every box that is required for somebody to be able to make a purchase decision. Are they buying directly from your social media? Probably not. They're probably submitting an application. So there's still room for you to lose them, essentially, is what I'm saying. If you're having people apply, but then you have a really low close rate, that's a sales problem. That's not actually a marketing problem. Maybe realign your priorities and stop working so hard on your content until you figure out your sales process. However, like I said before, you can eliminate a lot of the resistance within your sales process by checking these boxes prior to them applying, prior to you having a sales conversation with them. So you can make things a lot easier on yourself. When I first started my business, I was creating content that I thought would add value. I was educating. And the thing is that it didn't convert. And the second I started focusing on buyer psychology, the things that I understood, and understanding what is actually going to motivate the different buyer types, and I started speaking to those people, my content took off. And what you'll find is that you likely, and I've said this on threads, I've said this before, you probably are already reaching enough people to hit your next revenue target. If you're making like 10K a month, you're probably reaching enough people to jump to 30 or 50. It's just that you are not actually converting those people. This doesn't have to be a massive 180 in your content. You can take what you're already doing and frame it in a way that's going to be activating and check all of these different boxes. Don't lose hope. And also, I would challenge you, like I said, go listen to the buyer types episode if you haven't, because if you are falling into that trap of only speaking to the type of buyer that you are and just creating content that you think is good, you probably have people in your audience that are like wanting to buy from you, but you just have to get them that last 10%, right? And so if you went and created a couple pieces of content, maybe you're a driver buyer. If you went and created a couple pieces of content that were engineered to activate expressive buyers or analytical buyers, you would probably find that you could increase your sales literally overnight by broadening the amount of people that you can actually convert, because they're there, they're watching you. You just haven't checked all of these boxes to actually get them to move into your sales process or submit an application. That's what I want you to go and do right now. Go look at your last 3 posts and ask yourself the basics, okay? The most important pillars of this conversion equation. Are you speaking to their current reality? Are you overcoming objections? And are you showcasing results? If you're not doing at least those few things, I want you to rewrite one of those posts using this framework and making sure that you're hitting home to everything and see the results. How will you know when this is working? Number one, you will see an uptick of leads coming in from your content and you're going to see people applying. It'll be pretty obvious. You'll be able to see your conversion rate. And if you aren't tracking your conversion rate, if you don't know exactly how many leads you're getting every day, that's a different issue. That's a data issue. And we can solve that with one call. So let us know if you need help. I would also remind you that consistency is key. You can follow this framework and also not do it well. There is a level of learning curve that's going to come into place when you start implementing this because it's going to feel awkward. You're not going to quite know how to phrase things in this way because you haven't read hundreds of neuromarketing books, and that's totally okay. But once you start infusing these things into your content, even if it's sloppy, you're going to see it performing better than whatever it is that you are currently doing. Make sure that you are subscribed to the podcast. And if you have anything that you want to chat through, or if you want to see this framework in action, head over to my Instagram. It's at Kenda.Laney because this is literally what all of my content is. And if you want to have a deeper conversation about this, be sure to book in a free gap assessment with the team. They can go through and audit your content and literally tell you what you're missing and talk about next steps. So I appreciate you being here, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.